Recording.
Call the city council meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Mayor, all members are present except for Council Member O'Brien. He is excused from the meeting tonight.
All right. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mary's.
Yes.
I would ask that we add onto the agenda an update on road construction on 2nd Street and probably the rest.
Move to approve the agenda with that addition.
Okay.
Where are we putting that?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Let's do it after consent items. Okay?
You could do it in the middle, because you have.
You do have Bolton and Mink coming here on E, F, G, H. You could just do it at that time,
Okay.
right before E. D1.
So just before E,
Yes.
all right? All right, we got a motion for the rest of the consent items and a second.
Second.
We got a second? Okay, we got a second. Discussion? All those in favor say aye, or now I gotta get used to this. All those in favor, what do I say?
Oh, it's a roll call, so we're,
Yeah.
It's a roll call.
Roll call.
Okay.
so it's coming up.
Hold on, it's coming.
There we go.
Okay. That passed on a roll call vote of 7 ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Next, Councilmember Butterfield has some questions that he wanted to bring before the council.
I've been receiving a lot of calls on some stop signs, reducing speed limit on a few streets. Just wondering, when can we get those issues as citizens on an agenda? And also if we can get a kind of a little bit of an update on when we're gonna start street patching, because myself and I know Audrey's also been receiving a few calls that I've been receiving on some bad streets in town. And also the ARPA funds for looking at for the city of to use part of that money to buy lots for people, build houses for the housing needs here in town. I was wondering when we could get that on the agenda. I've addressed this many times, and I just need to get the stuff moving forward now. Thank you.
All right, so staff will have time until the workshop?
Yep.
Work session, okay?
Yep.
All right. Staff understands what he's talking about? Okay. Open forum, do we have anybody?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, we need to do the consent agenda.
I thought I did that.
We just did the proposed additions or deletions to the main agenda.
All right,
Sorry. We're still working through the computer process. so.
roll call.
Nope, I haven't read them yet.
What's that?
I need to read off the consent agenda items.
Okay,
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, on tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval the city council minutes of May 15th, planning commission minutes of May 3rd, CVB minutes of April 18th, police commission minutes of May 12th, municipal utilities commission minutes of May 22nd, parks and recreation minutes of April 19th, accounts payable report May 10th through May 30th, consideration of state 1-day to 4-day temporary on-sale liquor license permit for Foxhole Brew House, a resolution to accept state of Minnesota airport maintenance and operation grant, an memo of understanding for LALS contract corrections, a resolution for Cardinal Arena Zamponi roof repair. There's 2 resolutions for Public Works Sand Pro purchase, a resolution for 2023 pavement marking project, a resolution for fitness park installation agreement with Dynamic Resources Incorporated, a resolution to consider approving a labor agreement between the City of Willmar and the AFSCME Public Works Unit, and for council, and there is no information items.
roll call.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Done.
Mayor Reese,
Yes,
I'm going to ask that the last one, O, be pulled just for a review of what we're doing.
okay, so the resolution on the labor agreement is being pulled for discussion.
Yes.
Anything else? We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
It should be popping up on the screen for everyone to cast their vote.
I'm still getting used to this. I feel like I'm in limbo.
Still waiting on Osk and Fagerly.
Mine didn't pop up.
Want to do voice vote for Councilmember Osk?
Aye.
Councilmember Fagerly?
Aye.
That would pass with 7 ayes, 0 nays.
All right? Councilmember Nelson?
Yep. I just was asking if we could just have a summary of what we're approving.
Leslie?
Good afternoon, council. So with the AFSCME Public Works unit, it was a 4% increase, a 3-year contract, 4%, 4%, and 3, the same that of the LELS contract. We also have the same insurance limits that the city will have. That's on page 19, 25-1. And for the next 3 years, it's about, we have what our increase was for this year on there, and then with an increase of 2.5% that the city will be contributing to the health insurance for 2024 and 2025.
I would make a motion to approve the labor agreement. Thank you.
We got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, is that a roll call too, or is that?
Yes.
That is because it's a resolution.
Okay.
So it should be popping up on the screen. Okay, that passes, 7 ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Open forum. Do we have anybody, Judy?
Yes, we do. Let me just get this called up here. The screen is being a little late. Okay. Our speaker, while we're waiting for this to come, our speaker this evening is Patrick Thibault.
Close enough.
Sorry.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, City Council persons. About a year ago, I talked to Justin to discuss some concerns about fireworks. Always a popular thing. My motivation actually was to address illegal fireworks use during holidays and non-holiday periods. Part of the disruption occurs, of course, to some veterans. I talked to different people over the course of the last year. There were some concerns about veterans with PTSD. Fireworks sometimes extends not just on the holiday, but over the course of a week or a week leading up to a holiday. And so people that have jobs and get up early the next day. And of course, some of our furry friends, pets, that had talked to someone at the Hawk Creek. And sometimes people will just bring their dogs in who have a difficulty at home. Anyway, in my discussion with Justin, I did a little research, and hopefully this is correct, but Willmar relies on the Minnesota statute for fireworks usage. For example, like St. Cloud, they had done that for a while, and then recently they had their own, or they developed their own policy. I'm not recommending that. I talked that over, and that's not one of the most popular things. So just for clarification, or for those that aren't aware of the Minnesota statute, and this is very brief, fireworks that are illegal are considered those that are projectiles and that explode in the air, that type of thing, or even explode on the ground. I could, you think of sparklers, things like that, those are legal. Roman candles, I believe, things like that. But those ones that go up like rockets and explode and give us those nice views, those are illegal unless they're approved, of course, but for commercial or that type of thing. Anyway, I believe the law enforcement has done a very good job in policing this, and it's a major challenge, of course. How do you follow up an explosion goes off on the south side of town? You kind of guess where it happened. Within a few block radius, and try to get police there, and they have some other calls coming in. So, but what I would like, in talking with Justin, and I kind of thought of perhaps a public service type message could be put out by the city, either possibly through the West Central Tribune, the local radio, or social media platforms. And this could be done perhaps a week ahead of, say, 4th of July holiday. And just kind of a safety notice, and maybe just reminder of the state statute. And again, I'm not opposed to fireworks. That's not why I'm here. Just in terms of the usage, legal usage. So with that said, that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is a public hearing. Sale of industrial land to MB Rail Justice.
Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to open the public hearing?
Sure, I would.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing on the sale of industrial parkland to MB Rail.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So I'm going to provide just like a 10,000-foot overview of kind of what led us to this process and then kind of the steps we have going forward, just kind of looking forward with this land. And then I'm going to turn it over to Executive Director Backman to just kind of provide some clarity on some of the nuances and the updates in the purchase agreement over the past several months. So as you all know, we're looking at selling land west of the old airport, east of the new airport, kind of out on State Highway 40, 145 acres, with intentions of it to be a Willmar rail park with rail exclusive uses. This has been a culmination of Mr. Backman's work and the city's work and working with MB Rail and multiple partners to bring this together. It's going to be for a sale of $1.1 million that will fund the industrial park fund. Now, like I said, so just kind of going in the future, there's going to be a rezoning that comes before you all. There's going to be a public hearing for the major subdivision to approve this. There's a lot of work to be done. We've had a lot of meetings kind of looking at it, from all the utilities and the easements that need to go into it, from a bridge that needs to go into it, to looking at some of the environmental work that needs to be done also to smoothly and legally complete this process. And so, like I said, I mean, just kind of bringing us to this point, there's been a lot of work to get us here tonight to this sale, to this public hearing for this sale, and then there's still a lot of work to be done just kind of going forward. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Executive Director Backman, just kind of provide some updates on the purchase agreements and the changes that have happened with it.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Aaron Backman with the EDC. And as Justice was mentioning, we're pleased to have this purchase agreement before you. In terms of what was distributed on May 15th, there are 5 changes, and I'll just quickly go over those. About 95% of it is still the same. I'm having a final plat that's being distributed to you, as well as some information about MB Rail. One of the notable things, as Justice was mentioning, the price is $8,000 per acre, so the grand total is $1,160,000 for the property. 145 acres that would enable them to put rail infrastructure and be able to implement a rail park, as well as interface with various tenants that would be in the park. What I'm going to do at the very top of the page, this would be where it says Commercial Property Purchase Agreement. You'll notice the name there is Willmar Rail Park LLC, and that's on page, if you're looking at the bottom, page is 143. And so they have created a subsidiary, and it's based in Kentucky, in the state of Kentucky. So you'll see that Willmar Rail Park LLC reference. On page 2 of the purchase agreement, at the bottom under permanent easements, we did do one adjustment. If you look at the final plat, for example, in the lower right, you'll see a utility, emphasis on utility right-of-way, and that is 50 feet as opposed to 40 feet as to what you saw on May 15th. Turning to the top of page 3, so we're looking at the top of page 3, and it's item 3. Basically, there is a permanent easement for utility purposes, 50 feet wide, and so again, the one I'm pointing to is this little piece right here. So we have an easement, a combined drainage and utility easement here along the south side of Hawk Creek, but then we have a north-south easement as well. And the primary thing there is we need to make sure that we have utilities that go inside the park. We want to be on the interior of the rail line. So if we put a rail loop here, for example, I want to make sure that electricity is within that loop. I've had various discussions with John Herron about it. He concurs with what we're trying to do here. Eventually, we would want to marry up those and have connections with easements, but one step at a time, because we're going to have further subdivisions as we develop projects within the park. So this is a 390-foot 50-foot wide easement that will bring it to the runway. So just a point of reference from Hawk Creek to the runway. All right. The third change is under item 4 there on page 3 as well. For the use and benefit of the public, a permanent easement for drainage and utility purposes, 85 feet in width south of and parallel to the center line of County Road Ditch, also known as Hawk Creek. So John and I have actually walked out there along with other people. And you think that, 85 is kind of a long ways, but it just takes 35 feet, 35 feet just to get from the center of the drainage up to the top of the bank. So you really need to have more than, say, 50 feet to have enough spacing for sanitary, sewer, water, electrical. So 85 feet, it will work for the developer. That still is 15 feet away from where we're anticipating the rail to be. Next change is on page, let's see here, at the very end, and then you'll see under buyer, again, it's Willmar Rail Park LLC on page 12, and that's reflecting the subsidiary that was created. So with that, any questions regarding the purchase agreement? What I'd like to do next is bring up 2 representatives. I'm very happy to have Brian Miller. I want you to stand up there, Brian. He is the COO for MB Rail. Flew up from Kentucky this morning. And then we also have Brendan Keener, who is their Director of Business Development for MB Rail. So gentlemen, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for having us. Again, Brian Miller with MB Rail. I've been in the rail business over 30 years. I started out with Norfolk Southern for about 20, worked for another short line operator for about 8.5, and kind of branched out with a couple partners on our own to purchase rail assets. We purchased Industrial Park, a small transload operation, a small trucking company, and 5 short line railroads. So we have since sold off 3 of those, but we still have 2. We're primarily operating in the Midwest. We have some letters of intent for operations in the South, additional short line operations. So we're working through those processes, but we like the development side and the growth side. Historically, for the short lines we've taken over, they've been family owned for 20 or 30 years. The gentleman's getting ready to retire, doesn't have any family to take over. We'll go in and develop the business out and grow it. So that's kind of our plan here. We're going to develop it. We've had a ton of feedback from local industries, even industries outside of the Willmar area, and working on transloading for this park. So there's a lot of interest in this park, but we're very excited and thankful that you all have spoken with us about coming up here. Brendan?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having us up here today. My name is Brendan Keener. As Brian mentioned, I handle business development, project development, and some other odd jobs for Midwest and Bluegrass Rail. I've had the fortune of working in the rail industry, first on the public side in the state of Ohio, and then since then for the last 7 years on the private side for about a decade now. And I just have a few remarks about where rail fits in maybe to economic development with regards to this project. The rail industry is often perceived as archaic or difficult to deal with. And we want to be that link between businesses that want to take advantage of rail, but want to be able to navigate that. We want to be that intermediary because the economics still speak for themselves. When shipping high volumes of commodities over long distance, it certainly is cheaper generally to ship those products in or out by rail versus over the road. And there's other benefits to that as well. Now, the reality is many businesses in this area across the whole Midwest don't have their own rail spur. And so they can look at the rail line going by and say, I wish I could figure out how to take advantage of that, but it's just difficult to navigate the process. And so with the Willmar Rail Park, as Brian indicated, we're not necessarily the baseload industry that's going to directly have 300 people manufacturing something, but we want to be facilitators of that industry and help those industries find ways either to locate directly in this park, or if they're already set up in or near the community, to be able to utilize rail assets in the park to take advantage of rail through the process of transloading, which Brian mentioned, whereby products are brought in by rail and subsequently unloaded from a rail car and put onto a truck for either first or last mile delivery, so that businesses that are 5 or 6 miles from a rail track and want to take advantage of that don't have to spend millions and millions of dollars and frankly wait for 20 years to get permission and acquire the property to extend a rail line to their own facility. And so we've realized that this has, been a need on our other locations. We've had some success partnering with customers throughout the Midwest and a little bit in the Southeast, primarily on operations that we've purchased and revamped. This is going to be a blank slate, so we're really excited about that. Thankful to be here. We've received such a warm welcome, both from the community and from potential partners. So that's an overview of our goal and what value we hope to bring to your community. So thank you for the hospitality.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess with that, I'll, any questions that y'all have just kind of regarding future approvals or anything about the purchase agreement or the project, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't have a question on the purchase agreement. I just have a simple question. When you have I have a lack of knowledge of, but the circle that you're going to.
Loop track.
The loop track, will you have an engine within that system?
We can. It depends on how many other customers branch off of the loop track. If we've got additional customers in there, we'll definitely have a locomotive and go in and switch it, just as an industrial park switcher.
Okay, all right, interesting. Any questions? Well, we're excited about the project. It's thanks to Aaron. He's doing a great job, and we're looking forward to having the rail park. We've got, I think we're still the second largest rail yard in the state of Minnesota. So rail established this community. So anything else from you, Justice? Oh, Aaron?
I would say that this is a culmination of a lot of work over the last 12 years to have a successful rail area that utilizes the Y. People forget the efforts of the people that went before us sometimes, and there was a lot of effort to get that $50 million project finished. And that happened, we inaugurated it last October. This fulfills part of what we were hoping to accomplish with that Y.
Great, thanks, Aaron. If there's nothing else or no more questions, I'll close the public hearing.
Any public you want to speak it on?
I just have one question. Is the state going to be taking in funding for this park project? Are you utilizing state funds for this?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, in terms of the rail itself, that is something that's going to be privately done. But if we're talking, and we're looking at that first phase of it, the public component is related to Highway 40, and we'll be talking about that later in the meeting. And that's important for access in and out of the rail park.
All right, thank you. What is the action needed here?
The first one.
Motion to adopt an ordinance sign a number and publish it?
Mayor, members of the council, just because I believe we are still in the public hearing, I'd recommend giving the public one more opportunity to address the council. And then if there's nobody in the public, then close the public hearing, and you have 3 motions that have been recommended, but we can walk through those after the hearing is closed.
All right, is there any other input from those in attendance?
I'm sorry, sir, if you could come up to the microphone and you need to say your name.
Mike Anderson, State Legislative Rep for 1177 local. I was wondering if any other railroads have bid, or has this been let for public bid at all? Is it just being handed over to a private company? That's all I want to know.
Aaron?
A portion that is in the Y, which is controlled by BNSF, is a Tier 1 railroad. So if you're going to have a rail park, you need to have an agreement between BNSF as the Tier 1 and the people operating in the park. MB Rail has experience running rail operations, so that is a real plus for us, I feel. In terms of what do other cities do, most of the time it's private. Sometimes cities own rail institutions. In this case, I would not recommend that. I'm recommending that it be privately owned and operated and managed. I think that would be efficient, and I think it would be a good interaction between BNSF, which is private, and MB Rail, which is private.
Any other questions? If there are no other questions, David?
David Peterson. My question would be, the original Y project, the railroad was required to put in, the Y track itself and a secondary siding track that would service this rail park or whatever other development they were having on it. Are they going to fulfill their part of that agreement at this time?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. So it is correct to say that there would be a side spur that would come off of the Y. That was the intent. And we had various iterations, as Jared can understand. I've had lots of different versions of how that rail park could work. Now, you have to understand that the cost of doing that is at least $350 a linear foot. So if we're talking, say, 3,000 feet, right off the bat, we would have $1 million invested. That's a lot of money for the city of Willmar. And I think that if we can have the private sector do it, let them. Because they can do it more efficiently. And also, it accomplishes the same thing. If the idea was to have a side spur coming off of the Y, and it can be accomplished with MB Rail, wonderful.
Any more questions? Any more questions? If not, I will close the hearing. There's 3 actions. First one being a motion to adopt the ordinance, assign a number, and publish. Council?
So moved.
Second.
You got a motion and a second. Questions? Roll call.
Just waiting on Councilmember Fagerly. Do we need to do a voice vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that would pass, 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay. Second is a motion to publish by summary.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion? Roll call.
No.
I'm having some issues here with my computer. I don't have a start vote, so we'll just do a voice vote. Councilmember Osk?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Schultes?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Fagerly?
Aye.
Osmus?
Aye.
Butterfield?
Aye.
We have 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion passed.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase agreement in a form substantially consistent with the draft included in the packet.
Second.
Here we got a motion and a second. Any further questions? Roll call.
And again, we'll do a voice. One, Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Schultes?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Fagerly?
Aye.
Osmus?
Aye.
Butterfield?
Aye.
Osk?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. All right. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you to Brian and Brandon. Leslie, you're going to do an introduction here.
Yes, I'd like to introduce the new Central Community Transit Executive Director, Amy Nealand, and she will answer any questions you may have and give you an update into why she started the Executive Director. Thank you,
Welcome, Amy.
Coming.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for having me. I can't really give you a huge update. I've only been there for about a month and a half now, so I don't have a whole ton of updates for you. But one update I can give you is we were recently granted $20,000 from the Mid-Minnesota Development Commission for a fare-free route. So we are going to have a free city route that runs from July 1st through December 1st, and it will allow anyone and everyone to get on that route, that bus route, without a punch card, without tokens, nothing. They just can get on the bus and ride for free. So it should be really, really nice to have the summer, fall, and then winter months to see what kind of ridership we can get for just that.
It was interesting. I was at a meeting this noon, and we had representatives from different minorities in our city. And there was a young lady, Karen, saying that a lot of them don't drive, and they rely on public transportation.
Yes.
And I thought of CCT in that case.
Yes. There is, we try really hard to remove any sort of language barriers. There are certain things that are printed at different locations that have, different languages written on them. But I do feel as though that there is a need, especially in the Willmar area, for certain minority groups. Absolutely.
Yeah, because she said that they depend on public transportation to get to work.
Yes. So we are working on expanding certain routes that have been discontinued as far as like evening shifts, our Saturday shift, things like that. So we're working on getting more drivers and covering those routes and introducing potentially new routes and more routes. So,
Councilmember Schultes.
So do you know what that route will be yet? Well,
As of right now, they call it the Willmar city route. So it goes like to your, to like Walmart, Target, the major stores, cash-wise. I believe it used to come out here, and they ended this as a stop because of the winter months. It was really hard, and I have asked them to reopen this location as a new stop, as well as adding Robbins Island, which has never been on any of our routes before. So that was part of the discussion earlier today, was if we do have a bus, let's say it takes an hour and 15 minutes to go from the first stop to the last stop, if we added an extra route as well as picked this location back up again as well, is it going to make it 2 hours? What's that going to look like? And they told me that between our dispatchers and everybody, all of our schedulers and stuff, they said that should a bus get bogged down with too many riders and they don't have enough room, things like that, they will take a bus from another route that does have capacity to alleviate some of that.
Well, welcome.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Philip from MnDOT, Highway 12 plan presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. You can help me. All right, so we were here last in March of 2022, and we kind of discussed, I know there's a few new faces here, so I'll just give a quick background on the history, but there was a 2014 study done on the corridor of Highway 12 through Willmar. We re-looked at that in October of 21, spring of 22. We came forward to the city council and laid out the options of going to this 3-lane or keeping it as a 4-lane. And we got a letter of support from the city to go to the 3-lane option. Since then, a few things have changed. Back then, it was just going to be more or less a restripe, but we had the ADA walkthrough in June of last year. And we had a threshold where we had to replace all of the sidewalk for this project. So we kind of relooked at it and decided to move in the curbs 1 feet on each side, gives us more room for the ADA work. It also eliminates having the feeling that there's a parking lane on the outside of each lane. And then also at that March meeting, the middle section that's bituminous, kind of from 3rd Street through the east through Benson Avenue. That was going to stay 4-lane, but we've changed that to a 3-lane also. And that'll provide, that'll provide more room for the sidewalk on the south side, and then just more room on the north side. That'll be turf. But I guess we just wanted to bring this layout to you guys. We're at 60%. We plan on engaging the public in July. Right now we're shooting for July 10th or July 13th, just to get some input from the public. And then from there we'll go and we'll go to 90% layout, 100% layout. And then we still have to work through municipal consent with the city. So I don't know if you guys have seen this. If you want to look through it, we can. Any questions you guys have?
Audrey.
Just a question. It's hard to, the photo that we got, it's
Yeah, it's
hard to-
probably a little,
it's
I can
tiny.
zoom in.
With that, but on 7th Street,
Yep.
is there any improvements being made to that intersection? Or how will that work with the right turn lane, and will there be, I know, just a concern from the bike group about where the bikes can cross, and I wasn't sure with the ADA sidewalks if they're not meant for bikes, right?
That's a good question, but I think Highway 12 is it's a bicycle-friendly highway. So that's kind of one reason why we took out the bituminous, the 4-lane section in the bituminous, because it's really the only section of Highway 12 that didn't have a shoulder, from the east side of town to the west side of town. So they will be able to bike on the shoulder. I don't know if we really want to call it a bike route though, because I think the city does have bike routes north a little bit and south a little bit that parallel Highway 12. But more or less what you're looking at on the screen is kind of how 7th Street is going to look. It's going to be the same. We'll move that right turn lane in to 7th Street South, north some, to keep the 3 lanes, the 2 through lanes, and, or 1 lane each direction, and then the turn lane. And then I guess one other thing I should mention too is the signals at 10th Street and the signals at 3rd Street are proposed to be removed with this project too, because they do not meet warrants.
Really? So it's just going to be a 3-way and a 4-way?
What's that now? The signals?
You said the signals are coming out?
2 of them will. There's 4 signals along this project, 10th, 7th, 3rd, and 2nd. We'll take them out at 3rd and 10th. We'll keep one on 7th, which is the county road to the north. And then 2nd is more or less, you know, how traffic comes off of 1st Street to get onto Highway 12.
Okay. Councilmember Butterfield.
I do have concerns with taking out those lights, especially on 10th.
The signal?
Yeah. There's a lot of traffic, and you live in Willmar, you've heard this, the north side curse. Anytime you're trying to get to the north side, there's a train coming. You're gonna have cars backed up, and then all of a sudden, they get there, and now Highway 12 is busy, they're not gonna be able to get across. We need those lights at least on 10th. 3rd, I can see getting without, but 10th needs it.
So we did the ice reports. It was after MEA last year of 22, 21. And yeah, they don't meet warrants. So like we'll have to work with the traffic engineer if the city really wants them. If the traffic engineer allows them, it'll be 100% city cost for that signal. Right now, the signals are usually divided up by legs of who owns it. So the city would have 2, 7th Street South, 2nd Street, and MnDOT would have the rest besides 7th Street to the north. That's county.
Well, I think you should send him out here and hit the train a few times, and he'll see what I'm talking about.
Councilmember Schultes.
I would support that too, the keeping the stoplight at 10th Street there. Traffic coming over the bridge down that hill, it's a 30 mile an hour. And without that stoplight, they're going to be going 40, 45. I just, it's a speed control, if nothing else there. I come into town that way regularly, and I can tell you if I'm going 30, I got people coming right up on me there. Leaving town, same. They're just getting out as quick as they can. So I don't know that that's in the best interests of traffic control to lose that stoplight there.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Reese. 2 questions. That I do believe 10th Street is the designated bike route. Not having a stoplight there would make that a difficult cross on a bike. Because I think both concerns from both what previous council members have spoken with. So I would hope we can review that one. The second one is the map that you have up right now has a close there. I know there's multiple entrances into that car place there, and there's been a lot of cars that park pretty much on the sidewalk. Does that mean you're closing some of the entrances into that business?
Yeah, so our policy is, the district's policy for a project with the pavement preservation is to go around, look at all the properties, see who has multiple accesses. If they're redundant, you know, if they have it on the side street, can we eliminate one, you know, or multiple, whatever it is. So we did, we walked this last year too and met with all the business owners, or, you know, just owners on the corridor here that if they had multiple driveways, we talked to them to see if we could eliminate driveways. And Tony's Auto is one that we met with that you can see on this screen that agreed to closing his driveway. The only one that we are still working on would be the Holiday Store or Circle K. Still working with their corporate to try and get an answer on that one. I'll try and show you. Sorry.
Mayor Reese.
I'm not sure. Oh,
It's not moving very fast.
yeah, how much time you got? Anyway, it's Holiday over there. There's one right next to the intersection. I think it's 9th Street. But there were a few businesses that were on board with closing their entrances.
Councilmember Nelson.
Sorry, one more question, where that wall is on the,
Yep.
what's happening there?
Right. That's a different project manager. What I know is the original plan was to look at it last year. They were supposed to get a negotiated maintenance contract to address that wall last year, but I think something else came up that needed their attention more so. And then I think we're back on schedule, kind of the same as this year, that this fall it should be taken care of. I don't know what their plan there is yet, and that could change our layout over there.
Who owns that wall?
I would assume MnDOT since we're working on it.
That's by the Mans?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. I got a comment. The 3 lanes, when it's 4 lane and I'm going east and I come around the curve by the Presbyterian Church and I'm next to another truck, I feel, awful close. I welcome this 3 lane. You're giving plenty of room.
Yeah, so I think currently I think the lanes are 12-foot lanes. These will be 11-foot lanes, and some of that is for traffic calming. We hope that helps with the speed coming into town, coming over the Genio Bridge. But yeah, it'll be single lane traffic through these S curves around Benson Avenue to the bypass, and then we'll also put in the pedestrian crossing that we have planned here at Benson. And then, then it also eliminates the left-hand turns right now that are, technically in the fast lane at all the signals or the intersections. They'll have the center lane left to utilize.
By Benson, in the center, it's colored red. Is that going to be open or is that going to be a center?
It'll be a raised median, and then the magenta will be the pedestrian crossings.
So the Frida's constituency will not be able to cross at that point when they come from the east.
With their car, no.
Well, it was never planned that they would use it, but they do.
Well, I think Benson Avenue is a one-way.
Yes, it is. But coming from the east, they have been taking lefts to go in on Benson.
I'm not following here.
That's over by, it would be by,
The bottom of that the red center part,
Mm-hmm.
if you were traveling west, you couldn't take a left turn into Benson.
No. Because I think the ICE reports or the crash histories was one of the crashes here. I think people are turning left into Benson Avenue, and people kind of coming around on the corner, short notice.
They've been doing that ever since it was built. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. They shouldn't be crossing there. Anything else?
So, sorry, go ahead.
I'd just like to re-energize that, I want to see the stoplight at 10th Street kept up. On this project.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'll try and get some more information on that before we But like I said, we still have to get municipal consent, which means the city has to be on board with the project. So we're still working through that. We'll see how the public engagement goes too, if we hear back from the public. But it will be a city cost if it does go in.
Okay. Anything else, Philip?
And then I guess just a quick schedule. We're hoping to have this layout to 100% by August. And then after that, we'll start the municipal consent here with the city. Final design, we don't really know. Right now, it's scheduled for construction in 2030. But this is a shelf project. This is kind of why we're doing this layout. Once we get the layout approved and municipal consent, we'll put it on a shelf. And if some funding comes through, it can jump ahead and possibly be done sooner.
Okay. Anything else? Yep. Councilmember Nelson.
So if it's on the shelf and we lobbied to have funding for the project, it could come off the shelf?
Well, I think it'd have to come from the legislators.
Right, but if we lobby the legislature to fund this project,
Sure. I don't know that process of
Okay.
how to,
All right.
but I know there was one, I know the district just got some funding and a project just moved up. So it must happen, but who knows what the future brings.
Anything else? Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we request another study at 10th Street, the state will do it?
I don't know about that either. I'd have to check. I don't know if we would. We already did in 21.
Well, we're getting a new apartment building up there too, so that's gonna,
Yeah, and I think that, and that, we knew that at the time too, plus FedEx. So I don't know. I just don't see it changing, but we can get more information.
But we have a new transit director. She'll direct the buses to that intersection, so it'll be more traffic.
Oh, that's a good question. Almost normal. I don't know that one off the top of my head either.
Audrey?
I'm sorry if you said this already, but when did you do this study? What time of the year did you do this?
It was in the fall. It was after MEA.
Okay,
Because I think originally they had it planned during MEA.
okay, thank you.
All right. This is for info only.
Info only. So we'll have a public house. We'll be in touch with Leslie, get information out to the public. It'll be at the library. And we'll be there to meet with everyone.
All right. Thank you, Philip.
And then we'll still be in touch here with the council to give updates on the layout.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Next, there's 2 actions on changing a date of a city council meeting. Leslie?
Yes, the action that's required is the Juneteenth is on Monday, June 19th, which is our regular scheduled council meeting. And earlier, the state legislatures had passed that June 19th would become official in 2024. And then at the end of closing within the omnibus bills, they decided that this year, 2023, would be the effective date of Juneteenth. So with that passing, we have to reschedule our June 19th regular council meeting. June 20th is the recommended date for that, because the 12th is next week, and I don't think we could get everything together for the 12th. We do have a workshop scheduled for the 12th, but the following Wednesday through Friday is the annual Minnesota Leagues Conference, and we have several people attending, along with 2 council people attending, so it's kind of difficult to have it any other day except Tuesday, the 20th. And then that would be scheduled at the MUC auditorium.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the rescheduling of the June 19th.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Discussion? Is this by computer or, okay?
Yes, it should be popping up on the screen. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Go ahead, Leslie.
The second request was July 3rd to have that rescheduled also. I don't know if we, after several of the events coming up here, if it's really easy to reschedule July 3rd or not. Due to the process of some of our hearings that we've got coming up, it would push us out another week or 2 weeks with some of the hearings that are necessary in July. So we'd like to just maybe have that as a light agenda. We'll try to keep it as light as possible. Otherwise, it was recommended to probably go to the 10th and the 24th of July instead of, so the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays instead of the 1st and 3rd, but that's up to the council, and we'll deal with the hearings as they come up.
What is the council's wishes?
I say leave it the same. 3rd and 17th work session on the 10th.
Mayor Reese? I thought there was a recommendation to move it to 5:30 if we could.
Mayor Reese is out until almost 6 that day. Would you be back on July 3rd early enough to have a meeting earlier?
Guess I'll have to be.
You certainly can then. It's up to the council.
5:30 on the 3rd?
Do you need a motion for that? Okay, I would make that motion to reschedule the July 3rd meeting to 5:30.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Discussion? Councilmember Osk.
Just looking for the justification for the hour change in schedule. Why 5:30?
Because it's the day before the 4th.
Okay.
Events going on.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Any other comments? Otherwise, we have a motion for 5:30 PM on the 3rd.
Just waiting on Councilmember Butterfield.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it on your screen?
I have to flip over.
If not, we'll do a voice. Okay,
No, I
there
got
it popped up. So we have 7 ayes, 0 nays.
I didn't flip over to see it.
Thank you.
Motion passes. All right? Councilmember Osk.
Yeah, since we're talking about the schedule, I actually have a question about the meeting next Monday, the work session. I know that there's been a couple people from the public that have shown interest in either being present or watching that online. My current understanding is they're not able to watch online, and it's a small room.
No, we've scheduled MUC for next week, so we will be online next week.
Great. No motions are needed. Thank you.
All right? We have information systems equipment purchase. Leslie, you're back up.
Jonah is going to present this to you.
Okay, Jonah?
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Before you for approval are 3 separate quotations to purchase network, phone system, and server equipment. This equipment is needed to continue towards completion of previously approved information systems projects in the capital improvement plan. Approval of these purchases will update critical infrastructure and combine all currently separate phone systems. We're at 4 separate systems right now across the city into one. I'm here to answer any questions you may have about these.
Anybody got questions? You're just dealing with number one?
Yep, number one first, 3 separate motions.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call.
Just waiting on Councilman, oh, there it popped up. Okay, 7 ayes, 0 nays.
That passes. Resolution to approve one-time purchase of network server.
Yep, so this is the second quotation. Tech Check is for network and server equipment. The second one you're approving is from B&H Photo Video Pro Audio. That's for more network equipment for Robbins Island. And then the third will be for our phone system from West Central Technology. So just 2 more motions.
Move to approve. Got a motion
Second.
and a second to approve. Discussion? Roll call.
I have 7 ayes, 0 nays.
That passes. Next is a resolution for the phone system.
Third time's a charm. This is for a phone system citywide, including the police department. So we'll finally all be on one.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? Roll call.
Seven ayes, 0 nays.
That passes.
Thank you, everybody. I
Jonah.
appreciate it.
All right, we're going to have that update on the construction report.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm going to take one part of this and Jared's going to take the other. I just want to talk to you about street patching. I know it was brought up by Councilman Butterfield. To the date, we started out with the spring patching with cold mix, and we used just shy of 50 tons of cold mix. That runs about $130 a ton. Obviously, that's not a good solution, but that gets us over the hump till we can get asphalt from like a local contractor, whether it's Dunnick's or we might have to run to Glenwood. We just patched, we've used about 60 tons of hot mix so far. I know the areas we've patched has been the 13th Street and Grace area. We did some on the north side as well, like 10th Street Northwest. And yes, we are well aware of what we've got ahead of us. I'll be honest with you, we're probably ahead of the game just a little bit compared to last year's dates. We hardly ever get asphalt prior to Memorial Day, which we were able to do this year. And we're trying to sort it out with all the other things that we've got going on. I know we've been pouring some concrete over at the ball fields, kind of getting that stuff wrapped up. So it takes quite a few hands to make it done, and we're trying to shuffle it the best we can. And we're well aware of the areas that certainly have needs, and we'll be working at it very strongly going forward, especially once we get through Willmar Fest. So, any questions? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Reese. Is there any chance that you could go out and put some cones where some of the really bad spots are? I mean, there's unpleasant, I've taken a couple complaints within the last, and I did talk to Kelsey about it, and she let me know that when you were starting, but there's literally some places on Pleasant View Drive, and I took a complaint on 10th Street that virtually you can't pull anything, you can't do, would it be possible to put some yellow cones out there, orange cones out that would indicate you're coming?
Yeah, I guess we could do that. I'd be apprehensive to do that. I think then if we put the effort in, we'll just have to stop what we're doing and go out there and patch it, I hate to put a cone down and then somebody drives, or the cone gets moved and then somebody drives through it and then something happens. Pretty soon we're in litigation about a cone was there marking it and somebody moved the cone and drove into a pothole. So I really would hate to start that practice, I guess. I would rather One of the things that's going to help us is we just received some summer staff starting today, because, we have our full-time staff helping with the mowing and stuff that, we're getting enormous amounts of lots that aren't being mowed as well. I think Kelsey sent off 50 letters the other day for lots that aren't being mowed. And we're also aware of the ones on First Street that have been brought to our attention. I think some of that's going to come to a head on Thursday. And if they're not mowed, then we got to drop what we're doing to get that taken care of as well. So we're trying to sort it out the best we can. I know Pleasant View is a bad, 10th Street's bad in there. Dana Heights is a bad area. So we got it on the radar. I guess, we'll get there, as quick as we can.
We don't have sidewalks there, which is fine. I'm not
Yep.
complaining about that. But you literally, people with strollers or, you literally have to stop and wait and go around, with that. It's pretty, there's a really one spot that's really bad.
Yeah, I actually drove Pleasant View Drive it was like yesterday, the day before. I'm aware of what it is. So we'll try to get it sooner than later.
And I just want to also say I'm aware it's all over the city. So
Yeah.
it's not just one street or
Yeah.
another. But, kind of that get in line routine.
Yeah.
And then the second question is, what is the city's responsibility if a car breaks down because of a pothole?
Well, I guess once we know about it, we try to act on it as quickly as we can, so that's, then it becomes I don't know, if somebody files a claim, it goes through the insurance adjusters, and they look at it, they see what our responsibilities are and what our needs are, or what we have done about it, if we've ignored it or, we get to it. I know, the 10th Street, we had some issues with 10th Street, and I know we'd fill those holes multiple times with cold mix, but it doesn't last. Like I said, we just started getting hot mix, I think one day before Memorial Day, we got some, and then last week a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
We've used about 60 tons of hot mix so far this year. And that's about $85 a ton right now.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. It's $85.
It's about 85, yeah, 85 to 90 usually. We used to get it for about 50, so that's just how much stuff's changed.
All right. Thanks, Gary.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So on the lawn mowing of the complaints, I thought we hired an outside firm.
We used to do that, and now we can't get anybody to do it anymore because they're wrapping up dog chains and car rims and bike tires, and we've got a special mower that we only take on those lots and then we have to have somebody walk ahead of them and pick sticks and chains and, you name it. It's not good, and the private people, they don't want nothing to do with it, because it's hard on equipment. So it's a problem. It's a problem. I'm not gonna say it's not, So.
I think some of the grass growth this year is worse than it's ever been.
Yeah, and it's really bad right now. It's because everything's really going, It's like maybe I don't ever want to hope for drought, but it seems like it slows down a little bit, But it's an issue,
We got a beautiful rain today, Gary.
Yes, I know it. That'll help our mosquito population. By the way, we are monitoring that, and we probably will see some activity there too as well. So.
Okay. Jared?
Evening, Mayor Council. I believe the request is for some project updates, so I'd be happy to give those to you. Perhaps starting with 2nd Street. The contractor, last correspondence with the contractor last week, there is a sanitary sewer service that needs to be repaired before the bituminous wear course can go on. Their intent is to take care of that this week, with the blacktop to be placed early next week or late this week. There's also some cleanup things that need to be done, some turf restoration project items picked up. So there's definitely some punch list items remaining out there, but looking to move that forward to paving as soon as that sewer service is replaced. One of the benefits, I guess if you could call that, we received a call from CenterPoint Energy. They want to do some work. So they'll have a patch. but it will be prior to the wear course going on, so that's good news at least. But that's the update. On 2nd Street, the 2023 projects are moving along relatively well. Gorton Avenue, they're moving into the next area that they're going to be working on. They're doing some storm sewer. Irene, Augusta, and Mary, there's sanitary sewer and water services being installed, and then they'll move on to storm sewer and keep that process moving. That first phase that they did, there was a large diameter sanitary sewer that they needed to bypass, so that was where they started on that one. Block 22 and Sunrise Path, the parking lot removals have been completed, concrete work being done, and now on the path they're starting with some removals there too. And then the 23rd area, project area, that started today. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the construction.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. If you said I missed it, is there a date that they hope to have 2nd Street done or that they're planning to work on it?
They're planning to pave on, they're going to do the sewer repair this week and then the wearing course next week.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
I know I talked to Kelsey, and I know just a project update on the website. People are using those, and I don't think 2nd Street has been updated since November. And so
Okay. I'll
that was a
look into
request that I received also, that the people on 2nd Street could know what's going on.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we try to communicate to the residents is keep checking the websites, but if they haven't been updated, then
Yeah.
that's the problem. So we'll take care of it.
Jared, I just got a question on the projects where we're redoing the street, but we're redoing sanitary, storm, or water main compaction. Do we,
Yes, there's testing that's done for that. So we test the trenches, we test the subgrade, and then when the gravel goes on, we test that all before it gets paved. So it follows it basically all the way up. Now, there are some areas I know within the community that the soils are less than ideal and they get wet and it takes a while to dry them out and it takes a lot of effort to make sure that it meets density, but we are monitoring that, absolutely.
I just remember years ago, they had whackers that they would walk behind and they'd be hopping.
Mm-hmm.
Compacting.
Yep.
They don't do that anymore?
They do.
They do?
They do.
Okay.
Yep. A lot of the pipe is bedded in sand just because of our clay soils. The sand helps provide that structure, so.
Sure.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So driving today,
Okay.
I noticed there was a bunch of stop signs on Charlotte that weren't there before.
Okay.
When did they get added?
I would have to look into that for you.
Okay. Because I was
I
surprised.
mean, when they were installed?
And why were they installed?
Okay.
Councilmember Butterfield.
Yeah, on my follow-up on that, I know when we had our meeting on Charlotte, a few residents, they wanted to see the stop sign go on Minnesota versus Charlotte because they already have one at Johanna, Trot, and Becker. And Minnesota is kind of a thoroughfare. And I think, what was it, about 3 weeks ago, Jim, somebody was in an accident on Minnesota and knocked them into somebody's yard down around 4th Street? So I know the residents would like to see it flip-flop. That was one of the concerns that I brought up on the stop signs, was going Minnesota versus Charlotte. Or
Yeah.
at least a four-way probably there.
Yeah, we'll go back through the project notes on that. Yep.
All right, anything else for Jared? Thank you, Jared, for that update.
You bet.
All right. We'll go to the two resolutions on the Sunrise parking lot quotes.
Mr. Mayor,
I'll take these two.
if I may interrupt, when you're speaking, could you please sit up to the microphone so the public can hear you? Thank you.
All right, Jared, go ahead.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council. This item, the Sunrise parking lot quotes, was based on the discussion that we've had a couple times about the potential future of that parking lot. As directed, we did receive, or we did obtained 2 quotes for the improvements associated with that parking lot. The low quote was submitted by Joe Riley Construction in the amount of $27,362.40. The figure enclosed in your packet basically illustrates that that parking lot would be reconstructed in its existing footprint. And that is the pricing that was provided by the contractor. This is for council consideration as to whether to incorporate that as a change order into the existing Joe Riley construction contract. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Need a resolution introduced?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, the resolution is introduced.
I think the bid was 50, wasn't it, your estimate? So it came in.
It's favorable.
Any questions? Roll call. Whoop, Tom?
Now, we kind of talked about moving that parking lot here a few months ago. Now, is this going to be kind of set in stone where we would be keeping that parking lot, or we'd be able to switch that parking lot at another time? Because it's at Sunrise, right? Yeah.
So this parking lot would be reconstructed, so its existing footprint, I mean, perhaps down the road after it wore out or something, you could reconfigure it, but I wouldn't recommend, if we're gonna spend the money to redo it now, it definitely would need to hopefully exceed its lifespan before we do anything else with it, yeah.
But we did come in under budget by about 50% what we were looking at.
Yeah, the prices received were very favorable.
Any other questions?
I think the discussion was find a different ballpark for that age of kids to play at. And since Blue is built, we're just waiting for the grass to grow there. They can move there and play. So. At Swanson Field.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
We have 7 ayes, 0 nays.
It passes. You want to introduce or tell us about the next one?
Yeah, Mayor Council, this item is related to the Epitopics sewer and water extension project.
You missed a resolution.
I'm sorry.
There's another resolution
We have 3 actions.
for 2304.
For Sunrise.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
So we have to amend the budget for the Sunrise,
Sorry about that.
2304.
Got it. Yeah, so the next item is the budget amendment, which would increase the project budget to $479,395 with the addition of that parking lot. So,
Make that motion.
Second.
I think we got a motion and a second. Discussion? Roll call?
Seven ayes, 0 nays.
And the resolution passes. All right, Epitopics.
all right. The Epitopics project was the extension of sewer and water out to Epitopics. And the item before you this evening is a change order, really consisting of three primary items. One is dewatering. As we recall, last spring was super wet for us. There was a significant amount of water encountered, required dewatering to physically be able to install the pipe. Item number 2, or one of the second primary components of that is concrete debris that was discovered buried as they were trying to put the pipe in. So that was removed and then hauled off site. It was not buried again, which is a good thing. And then there was a additional structure height on manhole L. We are recommending approval of the change order in the amount of $126,274.38 for the landwehr construction project. I will note that these items are grant eligible as it relates to the sanitary sewer grant that we got for the project, and it is still within the contingency of the budget. However, it is exceeding the as-bid price, so that's why the change order is before you this evening. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions that you might have.
All right,
Move to approve.
Second.
we got a motion to approve. I assume it's called epitopics in this document since it's now Vaxinova, but because of the originality of the origin of the, okay.
Yep.
All right. Any questions? Roll call.
Waiting on you, Councilmember Butterfield. Seven ayes, 0 nays.
Thanks, Council.
All right, that passes. Thank you. Gary?
Good evening, Mayor and Council again. I'm kind of happy to talk about this next project. I'll give you a little background on it. I'm well aware of that Farm Right's the skid loader dealer, Bobcat dealer out on Highway 12 and Industrial Drive. They're building a brand new facility out there. And earlier this year, I had some conversation with them. I know we had, with our planning, we've had a kind of a planning of stormwater we've been working on and stormwater ponds. I had mentioned to the owner of Farm Right that we might have some interest possibly building a storm pond there. And he says, well, it's funny you say that because I need to build a new facility and stormwater is one of the components of that. So with that, we got all parties involved at the table and we came up with a plan to put a storm pond on their property. And so it's a real workable solution that we got ahead of the project instead of behind the project. So I feel really good about that. So basically what I got in front of you is to adopt a resolution entering an agreement with Bolton and Mink Incorporation for the Trot Regional Storm Pond professional services in the amount of $87,830. And I would stand for any questions on that.
Okay, this is a resolution. Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Gary, would this be just enlarging the pond that's already there?
Well, there's a very limited, you've mowed around it, so
Yes.
yeah, this would be enlarging it quite some, I think it's close to an acre, isn't it? Close to an acre? Yeah, 0.7 an acre. And so it's gonna go, so we'll have an easement on the Farm Rights property for the storm pond, but then they'll be able to utilize it for their stormwater runoff needs according to what their plan was. So it was kind of a win-win for us. And this affects the intersection of 16th and Trot, 15th and Becker, that area. So this, I think this will show great improvement on a rainfall. It's kind of one of our troubled areas when we do have huge rains that backs up through those backyards. So we're hoping to see some relief. And I know when we worked with Bolton and Mink on their hydraulics on levels of improvement, it was significant. So
Will this help on the other side of the tracks as well, or does that not affect?
yeah, that'll help on the other side of the tracks. So we'll hold the water back on the west side of the tracks, but in essence, it's helping the properties on the east side of the tracks.
Okay.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mary Reese. So if I heard you correctly, you said that it's an easement, so will the city be responsible for this stormwater pond?
Yeah, it'll be a stormwater pond that we'd be responsible for, like
Okay,
other.
but we don't own the land?
Correct,
Just have an easement to have the stormwater pond there?
correct.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Councilmember,
And I will second that,
okay.
and then just comment that seeing as how that's Councilmember Davis is in my ward, and we've had to address some of the issues at 16th Street and West Trot and those landowners by that ditch. Hallelujah. I hope it works.
Been a problem for many, many
Many years.
Well, that's the significance of having a plan in place that helps get to this point. And as long as I'm here, I'll just talk to you about one other thing. We met with a fiber company that's going to be installing some fibers in town. We had a pre-construction meeting with them, and then they asked if we had a bigger plan for street projects, and so we emailed them our 10-year plan, what their hope is to get ahead of what we have for street projects so that they're on the front side of our projects instead of
in the middle of it.
correct. So plans are important.
Mayor Reese,
Yes.
can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So the professional services will come from the local option sales tax?
I believe so. We're hoping to fund this
Where is
through
the
loss.
rest of the funds coming from to do it?
We're hoping to finance this project through the lost funds.
Okay. So then I'll just put in, when 9th Street was redone, there was supposed to be a stormwater pond put in the, off from 9th Street. That was supposed to be coming, and I've been asked questions about that.
Yeah, so we've looked
Is that
at-
still in the works?
Well, we've looked at that, and as you're well aware of, that area where that goes is an old dump. I don't know if you're aware of that, right, behind there? And so we've talked about that a little bit, and we've been doing some work on what that would look like, and we just haven't got to the point of what do we do, because you start, it changes things when we start digging into that old dump as far as if we're going to put a storm pond there and stuff. So we are looking at that area. We've kind of identified something, I'm going to say south of there we'd have to access some property or something there to maybe help that area. But yeah, we have that on our plans. But this probably kind of fell into our lap because of the construction that was going to happen there. So we wanted to be ahead of it than behind it. So
No, that's fine. I just didn't want it to be lost.
No, it's
because
not. And I
the
mean-
street design needs a stormwater pond over there.
Yep. No, and I don't know if I think we've presented that storm plan before, and we have some other spots that'll come before the council that we're looking at that would make some significant differences in the city, but there's going to take some cooperation through landowners and the city to work it out.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Oops.
Seven ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Professional services agreement with Bolton and Mink. Aaron?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this is an agreement with Bolton and Mink for design and construction services for Trunk Highway 40 Turn Lane Improvements Project in the amount of $208,894. On November of last year, MnDOT announced that the City of Willmar was awarded up to $900,000 in TED funding for the proposed Realm 5 Logistics Park, now referred to as the Willmar Rail Park. And I have attached the award letter. Since that time, the EDC and Bolton and Mink staff have met several times with MnDOT District 8 staff regarding this project. The location of the project on Highway 40 remains the same. However, we have incorporated some changes that D8 staff wanted. So when I submitted the application in 2022, we were looking at a turn lane and an acceleration lane on the north side of Highway 40 that would provide access into the rail park. And D8 came back to us and said, okay, that's great, but we would like to have a middle turn lane because you might have development on both sides, et cetera, et cetera. And so we took that to heart, and the estimated cost for the project is just over $1 million. The local match requirements for TED are typically 40%. Last August, when I was presenting to you, I indicated that Willmar's contribution would come from the land sale proceeds. The plans for Nexus and other partners have progressed over the last half year. Nexus and its parent company, Realm 5, have been focused on gaining customers and shipping product in Next boxes to Europe. They have shipped 8 different commodities to Norway, Belgium, and other locations. They determined that it would be better to have another partner, MB Rail, purchase the land and develop the necessary rail infrastructure, and they introduced us to MB Rail, which, as you know, is a rail services company based in Lexington, Kentucky. Knowing how long approvals can take at the state level, I would highly recommend moving ahead with Trunk Highway 40 improvements to provide road access into the rail park so that cars and trucks can enter and leave safely. The first step in that process is seeking a professional services agreement for engineering services. Bolton & Mank has been with us every step of the way. They've been helpful with this project since last summer. They were helpful with the TED grant application, with the project cost estimates, with the ongoing meetings with MnDOT, and yes, as the project evolved in terms of the design. Bolton & Mank submitted the attached proposal for the design and construction services for the project. These services include preliminary design, MnDOT coordination, survey, geometric layout, permitting, geotechnical, construction services, and the like. The project schedule includes the completion of design in November of 2024 and construction starting in the spring of 2025. I would stand for any questions.
Questions, comments? Need the resolution introduced.
Yep.
Audrey?
Just a question, are those funds coming out of the industrial park funds?
Right. When we have land sales, those go into the industrial park fund, and so then if we are having that local match contribution, that would be coming out of that fund.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to enter into a professional services agreement with Bolton & Mink for the design and construction services on Trunk Highway 40 Turn Lane Improvements Project in the amount of $208,895.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. This is a resolution. Any further questions? Roll call.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you very much.
Resolution passes. Thank you, Aaron. Ordinance setting a public hearing date for some land sale from the municipal utilities. Justice?
All right, thank you. So, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So we just need to set the public hearing for the land sale for WMU. Just a general overview of how we got to this place where they needed to sell the land. So initially they did a facility study. I guess initially when they purchased the land, they purchased this land with the intention that this would be for the expansion of their existing building downtown. Recent facility studies showed that an expansion of the current site would no longer suit their needs or meet their needs for the future and expansion. And so they've decided to make the decision to sell the property. And so this has already been to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission set to review it, and it's going to be actionable this Wednesday. And so this would just be setting the public hearing for later this month, June 20th, for council to approve the land sale to go to WMU. So with that, turn over to you for any questions.
I'll make a motion to set a hearing date, a public hearing date for the rezoning in General Business District 2 for June 20th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second setting the hearing date.
Just a question.
Yes, Audrey.
If the planning commission didn't approve this, would you stop the public hearing then?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is the empty lot next door to that tied in with the sale or not?
I'd have to look at the map. My understanding of it was yeah. It's the building and the lot, yes. So,
Yes.
yes. So short answer, yes. Sorry.
Any other questions, comments? All right, that is, I'm sorry. That is a motion.
Just waiting for voting. Councilmember Osk. 7 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Thank you, Justice. You got the next one, too. Go ahead.
All right, so this one is to set the public hearing for the creation of the General Business 2 District. And so it's just kind of breakdown of reason for this and I think the thinking behind this. So as you all know, if you all have looked at our General Business District, the zoning district, it's really just a collection of all sorts of uses, all sorts of businesses that just wanted to locate kind of wherever they wanted to in town. And so there's really kind of 4 distinct uses kind of across it. I mean, you have big box retail, you have small scale retail, you have like some industrial, then you also have like boutique capabilities in there as well. And so one of the things that the Planning Commission wanted to do was to break this out. It was to break the General Business District out into 4 separate districts, and this one would be one of them. And so the 4 districts are going to be the regular General Business District. There's going to be a General Business Industrial District with more of a focus along that would be more adjacent to on the outer edges of town, adjacent to the railroad. Then there's going to be walking scale, more pedestrian scale, more neighborhood scale general business. And then there's going to be GB2, which is big box retail for larger footprints south of Willmar Avenue to really kind of allow for more car focus and car scale retail. And so this would be setting the public hearing for that. And so like I said, this is already passed the Planning Commission, so I'll just turn it over to you for any questions for clarity kind of regarding the intent behind this.
There's 2 motions. So this is the first one to introduce the ordinance for public hearing on June 20th. Carl?
I don't understand, I guess, Mr. Walker, what having 4 now separate business districts, doesn't that just complicate things? I don't understand the reasoning here. What's the thinking?
Yeah, so right now, like on First Street, let's say if Girly Foods were for some reason to relocate and just lived, like we'll say at like Minnesota Avenue, like if Girly Foods wanted to go where the newer subway went, it could have went there. Or if there was someone who wanted to put like an ammonia anhydrous storage and sales facility on First Street right across from the cleaners, they could do that. And I mean, if they wanted to buy, we'll say like an entire block and just store that all there, they could do that currently. And so the point of this, of the reason of breaking out the general business district, like I said, I mean, if zoning districts don't have distinct characteristics or distinct uses, then it just kind of becomes an amalgamation of just different uses. And that's kind of what the general business district is. So that's kind of why you have all sorts of things just kind of within it, different scales, different intensities. I mean, you have like the Targets, the Arby's, like you have the Cleaners, Sway. I mean, it's just all sorts of different things that can go in it. And so the purpose of it would be to look at kind of start creating that corridor feel on Highway 12, creating that corridor feel north of Willmar Avenue of, okay, well, now you're in a different area, more pedestrian friendly, different uses. Because I know one of the things that has come up is the aesthetics of the corridor when you're driving through Willmar. Do we want car lots, junk lots to be on these strip corridors? Or this would be the opportunity to look at addressing it. And would be breaking out that general business district, because currently it's the general business district all the way through. And so some of those things are warehouse uses that have more industrial feel. Some of those things are retail feels. And then some of those things, like I said, are more neighborhood scale and like restaurants that are much more reliant on like foot traffic, and some of them aren't. And so just right now, the general business district is a home for all of them. And we want to break it out, and like we feel that Willmar Avenue, south of Willmar Avenue, should be a pretty good dividing line for something with a bigger footprint. And I think that was one of the inputs of the Planning Commission. Was initially it was 30,000 feet, and they lowered it to 20,000 feet to be more all inclusive of all the lots that already exist down there. And that's still pretty sizable. That's like a half-acre lot. So that was the main reason. Right now, it's just kind of if someone wanted to locate anything anywhere along First Street, along Highway 12. that it could be anything, just from how the general business district has been used and how it has been amended over the past. I mean, you could put housing in the general business district anywhere now too. So it's just kind of all over the place. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to do was clean it up.
Okay, so I guess I'm still wondering how is this going to change things? What, I mean, are there, you go north of Willmar Avenue, and I know that there's been talk about moving the setbacks, make them smaller, and so, and which is probably a different thing, but I don't know, I don't know what I'm trying to ask here, I guess. I don't know what the planning commission is thinking, I guess. What's their...
So like I said, so more of a designated place for like the big box, more amusement shops. So we've gotten like several requests just kind of regarding axe throwing, where breweries can go, where putt-putt can go, but also where can bigger stores like TJ Maxx locate. So places that have like a desire to be more, I guess like where their footprint is pretty large building, and like they're just relying on car traffic. They're more of a regional center draw where it's people driving in from 60, 70 miles to come into town to go shopping and go do something. That's more of like where that area would be, like more of like the regional stores. And then kind of north of Willmar Avenue, we want to designate that for like more of a neighborhood scale, since that's more budding residential, kind of like right on like the 2nd Street on each side. That would be more for the neighborhood scale, kind of bringing those things closer to the street and really starting to create a different, distinct area. And there'll be changes in that about signage and other things that'll be allowed, but more so the big regional draws and the bigger box retail, those things will be designated more south of Willmar Avenue. And then kind of looking at, I guess, like the other places in town, just kind of like that Highway 12 East and then Highway 12 West corridor, kind of like where Farm Right exists, Freeman Construction, Marcus Construction, Stacy's Nursery, those things like those more industrial feeling kind of north of Highway 71. Same thing where there's still, it's not a grain elevator, but that very tall ag building. Those are things that would be more appropriate. Instead, right now, if those things came to town and wanted to locate right on Minnesota Avenue and 1st Street, they could. And I mean, like, like I said, it'd be a lot to stop them just because a lot of those things are by right uses that they'd be able to do. So we were just kind of looking at trying to set a designated area for, like I said, some of these big box retails and really trying to be a little more deliberate about the feel that we want to create in different areas in town. And so I guess like the end goal for this would be to create a corridor area to where like beautification and aesthetics were the focus, where some of these uses would be cleaned up and it would be, okay, well, like where if we did want to put like a big welcome to Willmar, not necessarily a park, but green space signs and like really kind of an emphasis on, okay, like we really want these uses to make people feel that Willmar is attractive, then this would be the opportunity to do it. And so it would be looking at cleaning up those uses along in some of these areas. And so it would be looking at different corridors along like the Highway 12, 1st Street Bridge, and 1st Street just kind of going north and south and outside of, I said like north of Willmar Avenue, and then just kind of once you get on the other side of the bridge. So just kind of like looking at more like creating a corridor feel, but right now it's just the zoning district and the footprint that is possible right now in that district just really aren't conducive for it. And so that's why we're trying to designate an area. That's why we're trying to designate an area for it to be possible.
Looking for a motion to Audrey.
So obviously you're working with someone, this feels like spot zoning to me, and we've been waiting for a comprehensive plan update that would basically redo all at one time, and this is the second request now. We've kind of like have spots of town that we're talking about. So I'm just curious with why now? Why are you asking us to do this now? And then did you say that the Planning Commission approved this? When did they do that?
Yeah, so the Planning Commission moved this forward at the last meeting. And then so I would say,
when was the last meeting? So we don't have those minutes. Or do we?
Yeah. So you don't have those yet because those still need those will be approved on Wednesday. So what's today's date? Today's the 5th, so it would have been like the last Wednesday and the 3rd Wednesday in May. Okay. But yeah, so
I'm sorry, Justin, it's hard to approve something when, for us to approve something that you haven't approved yet. So I guess I would make a motion maybe to put it back to the.
yeah. So I just want to be clear. So this has been approved by the planning commission. And I guess like this is just to introduce the ordinance to set the public hearing date. This isn't for approval tonight. So, and like 2 weeks when there'd be like public comment on it and a lot of discussion regarding it, that would be the time to make a decision on it. Tonight it's just to set the ordinance on it. But yeah, so by then, by that meeting, there will be minutes from the last meeting of like when they did approve this.
Audrey?
Okay, so it's really frustrating, and I'm speaking up again, but not to have the planning commission minutes to look at when this is being brought forward. And I realize it's just setting a date, but we get the municipal utility meetings in our packets, and it says across the top, these minutes have not been approved. But we can at least see what went on and have that conversation. So it's difficult, and you know, we had a lengthy discussion on the last one during the public when we were there, and almost didn't do the last one. And so it feels like the cart's before the horse sometimes with this when you're asking us to approve it. I don't know.
What's council's desire here? Vicky?
I feel like we're just setting the date for the hearing, so I'm okay with doing that. I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. Discussion? Go ahead and vote. It's a simple motion.
Just waiting on Councilmember Osk. Oh, there popped in. 6 ayes, 1 nay.
Okay. Motion to publish by summary.
Move to approve.
Okay, we got a motion to approve.
Second.
We got a second. Discussion? That's a roll call.
Seven ayes, 0 nays.
That passes. All right. Justice, ordinance, set public hearing date to remove parking minimums.
Yeah, thank you. So this has been something that we've talked about for a while. That has been pretty challenging for the Planning Commission and I think also for the Board of Zoning Appeals. So just kind of like it says in the car, we've had to approve many plan reviews where parking minimums were not met, where parking minimums were more of an obstacle to the project getting done. We've had a lot of variance requests for them, and the Board of Zoning Appeals usually just approves them. When I say the Board of Zoning Appeals has met a lot about this, Board of Zoning Appeals does not meet regularly. I think over, I'd say probably about better part of 15, a dozen of them had to be about parking. And so normally, just like when you get that many variance requests about a specific thing, that normally just means that you need to change the ordinance. And then just kind of how we've been dealing with this and how we've encountered developers who are trying to build in town, oftentimes, instead of being a way to ensure sound development, the parking minimums have been much more of an obstacle. Just kind of like with the Farm Right project, they just, due to the size of their building, they're required to build about 42 parking spaces. They don't want to build 8 parking spaces just because they're like, if we build these parking spaces, our machines are going to crush them. We're going to have to replace them. We don't want to deal with this. We've had like the TJ Maxx, for example. I think the square footage alone requires them to have about 70 to 80 parking spaces. That project got approved with 35 compact car parking spaces. I don't know 35 people with a compact car. So, I mean, even with the subway where there's nearly 40 parking spaces, I've never seen 30 different people come to Subway in 30 separate cars that came on a bus. So this has just been a frustration for the Planning Commission. And like I said, this has been a frustration for a lot of people who are building in town. It's very expensive to build parking spaces. It's very expensive to maintain parking spaces. And right now, I mean, our parking minimums are just outdated. And so just kind of something that we would like to remove and like to give a little more discretion to the developer and allow staff to decide if the number of parking spaces that they have proposed makes sense for the use and for how they intend and how they run their business. I mean, even with some of the fast food spots, I mean, 80% of the business that they do is through the drive-through now. They don't need parking, and so oftentimes they don't want to build it. So it's really just more of a barrier to investment than anything. And so this is something that the Planning Commission has long talked about. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you for any questions. But once again, just to introduce the ordinance and set the public hearing date.
All right. Awesome. Julie?
What do other communities do?
Yeah, so this is a growing trend. So parking minimums have really kind of wreaked havoc on a lot of the built environment around like a lot of communities. Sometimes like in residential areas, you'll have people require 2 to a residential unit. That's something that we require. So a lot of times you see it where they either have parking maximums or they just remove them, or they just kind of leave it very vague and kind of up to staff discretion on a lot of this. But this is more of a trend across the country that parking has been a barrier to investment for a lot of people who are just trying to build. I think recently, like when we looked at it, it's running about I'd say about $6,000 to $9,000 about like a parking space, just kind of one. And so, like I said, I mean, the problem isn't necessarily just like the construction. There's also the maintenance side of it as well. I mean, we see that with certain parking spots and parking lots in town. People just don't want to maintain them. It's a lot. And so a lot of people would feel if they could either get a smaller lot, subdivide, and not have to build that parking and build what they need, it'd be much better for them long-term and for their business. And I guess just kind of looking at the codes, like I said, I mean, our parking is derived from the square footage of the building, not necessarily the use of the building or the traffic that they generate. And so a lot of times it's just something that's being put upon them. It's not something that they want to do.
Justin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our city's just changing the minimum. Has the Planning Commission looked at changing the minimum rather than just removing it, but rather lowering it?
Yeah, and so one of the things that's a good question. So like I said, a lot of places are instituting maximums where you cannot build more than this amount of parking, period. We don't care. If you want more parking, the answer is no. So that was one of the things that we talked about at the Planning Commission level. They felt that was too restrictive. They felt that if people wanted to build more parking than they can. A recent example is the Preserve on 24th project. They overbuilt parking by 40 parking spaces because the clientele that they serve, they have garages. And in our code, we count garages as parking spaces, and a lot of Minnesotans require storage for all their outdoor vehicles. So that's something that they wanted to do. And so there'd still be the flexibility to do that. This wouldn't necessarily, like, let's say if you wanted to come in and build 200 units and you were like, well, we're going to build 0 parking. The answer would be no. Like, well, we'd need to see, well, what are your past projects? Do you normally build at a 0.8 ratio, or do you normally build at a 1.2 to 1 ratio? Right now, the code requires them to build to a 2 to 1 ratio. For a lot of them, they'd rather not do that. So I could drive down the cost of some projects. It's really just, like I said, turn it over to the developer. How much parking do you need? Show us the use where you've done this in another community and we'd like to see like the parking trends, and then we'd go from there. But like for that, like I said, I mean, some uses, they just don't want it. Like I said, I mean, we got some businesses, like I said, like the fast food places doing 80% of their traffic through the drive-through. You got places where they have a lot of construction because it's a warehouse operation, but they never have more than 5 people in the store. And so they don't even want to build 10 parking spaces. They'll build the 88 parking spaces and then they'll move on. And so right now, I mean, just like as the code currently is written, it doesn't allow the flexibility to keep up with the modern demand for different businesses and all the different businesses that we have in town. I mean, even back when I was on the Planning Commission, I mean, Northern, it was like out in the industrial park, just from how the layout worked for them getting trucks in and out, they wanted to build less parking. And we were just like, well, why not? I mean, we don't see why you need an extra one. So I mean, it's a lot of that where we run into it, not just, frivolously getting rid of it. Like I said, I mean, we've had variance requests for it, 35 compact cars, and I mean, just like countless, like always, like we'll talk through everything. Everything makes sense. We really want to do this. We have the funding for this. Okay, how much parking do I have to build? It's always like the elephant in the room that people want to get around. So like I said, I mean, they'd much rather be able to decide how much parking that they think is right, and then we can kind of go from there and decide if it's viable for the community. And so with the ordinance changes that we're recommending, we would still have that authority to require the parking that we think is necessary. Like I said, it wouldn't be a situation where Block 25 would come in and they'd get zero. They wouldn't have to build any parking spaces. That wouldn't happen.
Okay. And tell me, the parking minimums, they were established for what purpose?
So just kind of from my opinion, kind of looking at the code, this code really, like Willmar City Code, resembles a lot of the other code kind of drafted in the area, just kind of around like in a lot of rural communities. And a lot of it, like I said, derived from square footage. And so how many employees do you have? How big is your business? All right. And then it's like then it's whichever one is lesser. So add these. And so it's a lot.
But what would be the purpose of having a parking requirement, a minimum? Like,
So-
why were they instituted to begin with?
Well, yeah. So a lot of like old zoning and parking requirements were drafted by attorneys, not necessarily like by planners who were working with it. And so, like I said, I mean that's why there's not a lot of flexibility when it comes to the business type. It's what's standard across all businesses, square footage. What's standard across all employees? Okay, so let's draft it by how many employees you have. What's the shift number? And so, I mean, these are things that we go through in the code when we're looking at administering what the parking decisions are going to be. And so, I mean, we've had businesses come in where they don't have any employees, and they're like, well, why would I need to build this? So, like I said, I mean, just it's rigid, it's a little old, and it doesn't keep up with the modern demands for businesses. And so, like I said, it's much more of a hindrance for good business than it is for allowing projects to happen.
Okay. And I think my last question, if I may.
I'm on yours. Wouldn't the purpose have been so that they're not using the residential street for the parking for the business?
Yeah. So in some areas, so we do have the off-street parking, and so that is the thought process for residential. But this is just for the commercial and the industrial. This would not be changing that for like if someone wanted to put up a house that like they could just like build out lot line to lot line and then just park all of it and then just have big parties and park everywhere. So that it wouldn't be the purpose of that.
Okay. I'm thinking of the nursing home, Bethesda on West 18th Street and Willmar Avenue. And the staff ends up having to park in the residential area around there. That they need more parking.
But I just want to say, there is parking for them that staff chooses to park because they go in that door. And that's an enforcement issue that I've taken complaints about with the staff park or they're out there. So that's a concern. I think, I don't know what the answer is because Bethesda has tried to enforce. There are enough parking spots for staff to use, and staff still do it. So it is a problem for if the uses are mixed with residential kind of things. So I'm just curious about who's going to review this. And I think the last thing I see on here is that you can consult the planning commission, but who reviews the plans to make sure that it's not going to do another Bethesda?
Yes, yeah, certainly. So that's a good question. So currently right now we have a lot of things that require. So I would say all things require plan review. The only difference is that if it requires public plan review, which goes to the planning commission, or if it's an administrative plan review, which is still at the discretion of staff. And so one of the things that we look at a lot is parking lots. Parking lots cannot be built in town or constructed in town without the approval of staff. And so that goes through my department and the city engineer. And so that's just for administrative review. And so then for the plan review, so all the things that would still need public plan review, those things have to go to the planning commission. And so now currently it's like, okay, like that's one of the checklists that we meet of, okay, well, 20 parking spaces are required. They provided 24, et cetera. And so then like when we talk about it, it'll be more, okay, well, they wanted to provide 12. They have other businesses in other areas, and like, at most they've really only had 10 on their busiest day, and so they are happy to provide 12. And so it'll be more things like that. So it's still something that we will send to the planning commission. Well, they'll get comments about, and then if they want to interject and say, no, well, like that doesn't really make sense. I think in this area that this should have more than that. Then that's something that they still have the ability to do. And I think especially when we have situations where we have these big intense uses that may go close to these residential areas, the scrutiny will still be on that project to provide the off-street parking necessary to facilitate sound development. But just generally speaking, across the board, much more of a hindrance for development, for projects, than like for people to open businesses. Like I said, I mean, even with the Walmart parking lot now, I mean, they got some areas that they need to fix in there too. And I mean, this is a result of that. I mean, they had to build to the parking minimums. So.
Do I even have a motion yet? I didn't think so. This is for setting a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for June 20th, 2023.
Second.
We got a motion and a second, setting the hearing. Discussion? Go ahead and vote.
Seven ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes.
I'll make a motion to publish by summary.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call.
I don't have that on here, so we'll just do a general voice roll call. Councilmember Osk.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Schultes.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, does that conclude our business? Any community pride announcements?
Yeah, one, Mr. Mayor.
Rick?
Hey, Mr. Mayor. The annual baseball boosters having their tournament this weekend. It'll be 64 teams. They're coming from North Dakota, South Dakota, the cities down south. And it's ages 9 to 14. And there's a couple Willmar teams that are 8 years old. They'll be playing with the 9s. And because Bluefield isn't ready to play on, they have to play a few games up in Spicer. Should be a good weekend for baseball.
Okay, anything else? If that's it, I'll
To adjourn.
We need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
adjourn.